I'm 30 years old, and I've been working as a software engineer for about 5 years now. I'm generally a pretty laid-back guy, but I've got a bit of a contentious relationship with my family, particularly my older sister Rachel. She's 35, and we've never really gotten along. My parents always say it's because we're just too different, but I think it's more complicated than that. Growing up, Rachel was always the golden child. She was the eldest, so she got away with murder, and my parents were always more lenient with her. I, on the other hand, was the baby, and I got held to a different standard. I always felt like I was living in Rachel's shadow, and it drove me crazy. As we got older, things didn't really improve. Rachel would constantly borrow money from me, and then she'd pay me back late, or sometimes not at all. She'd promise to do things for me, like help me move or watch my dog when I went out of town, and then she'd flake on me at the last minute. I'd try to talk to her about it, but she'd just get defensive and tell me I was being too sensitive. Fast forward to today, and things are still pretty strained between us. We're both adults now, but we still don't really get along. We don't really talk unless it's a family gathering or a holiday, and even then, it's usually just small talk. Here's where things get complicated. Last year, my grandma passed away, leaving behind a pretty significant inheritance. She had a lot of money, and she divided it up between me, Rachel, and our parents. I was surprised when I found out I was getting a significant chunk of it, $100,000 to be exact. Rachel was not happy about this. She's always been the one who was closer to Grandma, and she felt like she should have gotten more. She started calling me and texting me, asking me to share my inheritance with her. She claimed that Grandma would have wanted us to take care of each other, and that I should give her some of my money. At first, I tried to be understanding. I told her that I was sorry she was upset, but that Grandma had made it clear that the inheritance was for me to use as I saw fit. Rachel got angry, telling me that I was being selfish and greedy. She said that I was hoarding the money and that I didn't need it as much as she did. Things escalated from there. Rachel started showing up at my work unannounced and asking to talk to me. She'd get into arguments with me in front of my co-workers, and she'd post passive-aggressive things on social media, implying that I was a bad sibling for not sharing my inheritance. I've had enough. I've changed my number, and I've blocked her on social media. I've also started taking steps to protect my financial information, just in case Rachel tries to get her hands on my money. But here's the thing. Last weekend, my family had a big gathering. At my parents' house, Rachel was there, and she brought up the inheritance again. She started crying and telling everyone that I was being unfair and that I was hurting her by not giving her any of the money. My parents got involved, and they started lecturing me about being more generous and more willing to help out. My sister. They told me that family is more important than money, and that I should be willing to sacrifice some of my inheritance for Rachel's sake. I lost my temper. I told them all that Rachel had been treating me like crap for years, and that I wasn't just going to hand over my money to her, because she was being manipulative and guilt-trippy. I told them that I deserved to have some financial security, and that I wasn't going to let Rachel bully me into giving it up. The fallout was immediate. My parents are still not speaking to me, and Rachel is still posting about how hurt she is on social media. I'm feeling pretty guilty, to be honest. Not because I think I did anything wrong, but because I know my actions are going to cause a rift in our family that might never be fixed. So, Reddit, Aita, am I the asshole for not giving Rachel any of my inheritance? Was I being selfish and unfair, or was I standing up for myself against a toxic sibling? I've been reading through the comments in my head, and I can already see the arguments on both sides. Some people will say that I'm being heartless, and that I should have just given Rachel some of the money to avoid all the drama. Others will say that I'm being strong and standing up for myself against a manipulative sibling. Here's the thing. I don't know what the right answer is. I do know that I've been treated poorly by Rachel for years, and that I've finally reached my breaking point. I know that I'm not going to let her bully me into giving her my money, no matter how much guilt she tries to trip me with. As I look back on the whole situation, I'm reminded of all the times Rachel has burned me in the past. I'm reminded of the times she's borrowed money and not paid me back, the times she's flaked on me, and the times she's made me feel like I'm worthless. And I'm reminded of the fact that I'm finally standing up for myself. I'm not sure what the future holds. I know that my family is going to be mad at me for a while, and that Rachel is going to keep trying to guilt-trip me into giving her money. But I'm ready for it. I'm ready to stand up for myself, even if it means being the asshole in the story. I'm willing to take that risk because I know that I'm worth it. I'm worth standing up for, and I'm worth fighting for. And if that makes me the asshole, so be it. I'm okay with that. As I finish writing this, I'm feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I'm not sure what the outcome will be, but I'm ready to face it head on. I'm ready to take on the drama, the guilt trips, and the fallout. I'm ready to be the asshole, if that's what it takes to stand up for myself. And who knows? Maybe someday, Rachel will realize that she's been treating me poorly for years, and she'll apologize. Maybe someday my parents will see that I'm not being selfish, and they'll come around. But until then, I'm going to stand my ground. I'm going to be the asshole, and I'm going to be okay with it. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents I'm moving out for my mental health? Let me start off by saying that this is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Writing it out, I can feel the weight of judgment hanging around my neck, like a noose. I need to know if I'm the a-hole in this situation, so I'm posting it here. For context, I'm 25. I've always been the dependable child, the one who towed the line and made my parents proud. I graduated at the top of my class, landed a decent job in my field, and even got married right out of college. But behind the curtain of that picture-perfect family life, I was struggling. The pressure to maintain this ideal started to eat away at me until I hit rock bottom. This story truly starts about a year ago. That was when the anxiety attacks began to creep in, turning my life into a foggy labyrinth of worries and fears. I would often find myself sitting on the bathroom floor in the dark, whispering affirmations to myself in a desperate attempt to calm the racing thoughts in my head. You are okay. You are okay. But I wasn't okay. I was slipping. My parents, of course, had no idea. They still saw me as their golden child, perfect grades, successful job, beloved by friends and family. What they didn't see was the battle raging inside me. They certainly wouldn't see it through my cracked facade if I didn't say anything. To give you an idea of how my family operates, my parents are such firm believers in the mantra, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. They loathe the idea of weakness, especially emotional vulnerability. During family dinners, we engaged in laughter and stories of achievements, but anytime someone tried to bring up mental health, it was quickly put aside. It's just a phase, my father would say, dismissing the struggle that so many of us face. So fast forward to last month when things became unbearable. I felt like a ghost wandering through life, and I could no longer ignore the abyss that was swallowing me whole. I decided to take control of my mental health by moving out and getting some space from my childhood home. It wasn't the biggest place. A small efficiency near my office building seemed like a much healthier environment for me. I thought about how to approach my parents with the news. I contemplated waiting for the right moment, perhaps a quiet afternoon when we could sit down and talk. But instead, I impulsively blurted it out during dinner one night, hoping they would be understanding. "Mom, Dad, I'm moving out," I said, my heart racing as I pushed the words from my throat. Their reactions were instantaneous. My dad dropped his fork and the clatter echoed in the silence. My mother's face turned pale as her fork hung halfway to her mouth. "What? Why would you do that?" my dad demanded, the sharp tone cutting through my rising anxiety. I tried to explain, stumbling over my words, the pressure of their combined disappointment weighing down on me. "It's for my mental health. I need space. I need to breathe." My father scoffed, his disbelief palpable. "Mental health? You're fine. You've always been fine." My mother, with her eyes glossing over, tried to intervene softly. "Honey, is there something else bothering you? You know you're welcome to talk to us." "It's not about you, it's me. I just can't deal with everything anymore. I need to do this for myself." That night turned into a war of words. My parents lashed out, pointing out every time I had failed in the past, how I hadn't tried hard enough or given things my all. "You're just throwing away everything we've worked for," my father said, his voice booming. It was as if every argument built up over the years was unleashed at once. It felt less like a conversation about my mental health and more like a condemnation. "I can't be your puppet anymore," I fired back, fueled by the anger of my hurt. "I need to take control of my life." After what felt like hours of rising voices and hurtful accusations, I stormed out of the house, leaving them in disbelief. I moved out a few days later, my heart heavy but determined. Now I sit here typing this on my small, barely furnished couch, questioning every choice I've made. I wish I could say that my life improved immediately, but the road has been bumpy. There were moments when loneliness wrapped around me like a blanket, and I faced my fears in a way I hadn't before. I have since begun therapy to address the deep-seated issues I had pushed down for so long. I'm learning to navigate through the fog, and slowly I am finding my footing. But then there's the fallout with my parents. They have refused to visit me since I moved out. The last time I spoke to them, my father's voice dripped with disappointment, while my mother seemed to shed silent tears for what she had lost, the daughter who was once the shining star. They've started showing up at family events but conveniently skirt around me. They tell other family members that I'm going through a phase and that this new lifestyle is just a cry for help. It feels like a dark rehearsal of all the times my parents dismissed my feelings. I can't shake the feelings of guilt, wondering whether I hurt them unnecessarily in my own quest for health. So now I'm stuck wondering, am I the a-hole for moving out and prioritizing my mental health over my family's expectations? Did I break my parents' hearts in a selfish bid for freedom? I want to hear your perspectives. I hope this community will give me clarity, as standing on the precipice of two worlds feels surreal. Am I the a-hole for going against everything I was raised to uphold in pursuit of my own life? Would love your thoughts. Am I the a-hole? This question danced through my mind as if it had a mind of its own, echoing in the deepest corners of my conscience. It was only after everything had unraveled that I found myself needing to ask, needing to find clarity in the tangled mess of my emotions. In the picturesque small town of Maplewood, life unfolded in familiar rhythms. Neighbors waved as they mowed their lawns, children played tag until dusk, and the local cafe served the best coffee with an extra dash of gossip, just how we liked it. I had lived there all my life, and each creaking floorboard of my childhood, home was woven with sweet memories and a few painful ones, primarily revolving around my family. Growing up, I had always felt second place to my older sister Emma, my parents' golden girl. She was brilliant, vivacious, and seemingly perfect. I was the bookish one, always in the background, scribbling down my thoughts on anything but myself. While Emma garnered bouquets of praise and commendations, I made do with a good job here and there. Perhaps that was why it took so long for me to realize how deep-seated my resentment toward her had grown. It wasn't until a fateful conversation one rainy evening that my angry heart revealed its true colors. I had just returned from university, armed with dreams of making it big as a writer. I saw my family gathered in the living room, Emma sparkling with news about her latest promotion. It was an admiring audience, and I felt my scab of insecurity fissure open again. My parents hadn't even noticed I walked in. "So what did you accomplish while you were gone?" Emma asked, an attempt at tenderness laced with a hint of mockery. The laughter that erupted from my parents felt like stabs to my gut, sharp, unrelenting. "Still writing in your little journal, huh?" Something snapped within me, a realization that I had buried for far too long. Perhaps I was tired of being the one who was relegated to the sidelines, the underachiever. And amidst my bitterness, I couldn't help but retaliate. "I'm working on my first novel, Emma," I shot back, the words escaping in a rush. Not everyone can thrive in a corporate job. A chill fell over the living room. I had crossed a line. The gleam in my sister's eyes dimmed, replaced by discomfort, as our parents attempted to fill the silence with a clumsy remark. I noticed the way Emma clenched her jaw, her breathing steadying to mask the hurt I had inflicted. With that, the conversation shifted, my revelation dismissed, and I felt small and exposed. Days turned into weeks, and the heaviness between Emma and me lingered like a dark cloud. I spent time in my room working on my novel, but every sentence felt hollow as my envy gnawed at my soul. I scribbled scenes in the depths of night while my mind replayed our encounter, looking for the strength I needed to reclaim my position in my family, but all it did was foster a bitter obsession. Then, of course, there was the fateful family gathering. It was our mother's birthday, a day cloudy with inevitability. I steeled myself for the evening, determined to keep the peace, but the warmth in the air only intensified my resentment toward Emma. I brewed anxiety in the corners of my mind as I got dressed, hoping to remain invisible, yet bursting with a desire to be noticed. The evening unfolded with laughter and toasts, and I plastered a smile on my face as I feigned participation. My father delivered a heartfelt speech, praising Emma's accomplishments, and I clenched my fists, feeling the warmth drain from my cheeks. When it was my turn to speak, I barely could bear the thought of showering her with praise. Instead, I muttered about getting back to writing, hoping my words could ignite some semblance of understanding. That was when my mother, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me, wondered aloud if I had considered entering a writing contest. Emma chimed in, "Oh, you could win," just like I did at my last promotion. That moment seemed to freeze. As the words rolled off her tongue, my heart raced, spiraling deeper into a well of anguish. My instincts took over, and I shot back, "Well, not everyone thrives on corporate." "Success, Emma." Silence fell. My father's fork clattered to the plate, the clinking like ice cracking at my feet. I could feel my mother's gaze simmer, the understanding disappearing with my misguided words. Emma's expression morphed from surprise to pain in an instant. I had done what I never wanted to. I had hurled her achievements back at her with a cruel twist. That night, Emma left early, tears glistening in her eyes. The moment the front door clicked shut, my mother's fury erupted. "How could you say that to your sister? She works incredibly hard, and she includes you in everything." I didn't want to confess the truth, that I felt overshadowed, that my dreams didn't seem to matter to anyone but myself. In an act of defiance wrapped in shame, I simply stormed to my room and slammed the door, leaving words unsaid and hearts bruised. The following days were engulfed in silence. Emma stayed away, and I dove deeper into my writing, but all my inspiration felt tainted. Every page was smeared with the weight of my guilt, and soon I found myself uneasily wrestling with the question I now had to face. Am I the a-hole? It haunted me. I thought about my sister and our childhood, the way she had always led with her heart, genuinely caring. In my weakness, I felt strong enough to lash out, to remind her that I too struggled, and that our lives were different, but connected. But in my moment of temptation, I had chosen to hurt rather than heal. Weeks passed, and my parents had arranged a family dinner. The tentative air was thick with unspoken apologies. I recognized Emma's smile as she entered. It crinkled around her eyes yet didn't reach her heart. As we gathered around the table, of course, the topic switched back to her life, her job, her life choices. Each word struck painful chords in me, and there was an unsettling knot in my gut. Finally, it was too much. "Emma," I started, pushing the tremor away. "I'm sorry." She looked at me, surprised, her fork halting mid-air. "What for?" "For being a jerk," I admitted, my throat tightening. "You have every right to shine in your life, and I should be proud of you. I let my jealousy blind me. You inspire me." The silence stretched thin as Emma's gaze softened. The breath she released escaped like a ripple through the fabric of our relationship. "Thank you," she whispered, the connection igniting with a bittersweet flame, a reminder of our frayed familial ties but also a promise of renewal. And in that futile second, I thought of the question that had plagued me for endless days. Am I the a-hole? Perhaps I had been, but in that acknowledgement was the seed of redemption, and with it I realized that I was not alone in this. We could rebuild, two sisters carving a new path amid the foundations of gratitude, love, and understanding, flawed and human as we walked toward the light together. Am I the a-hole for not forgiving my best friend's betrayal? I never imagined I would find myself on a forum like this. After everything that's happened, I'd rather keep my head down and focus on rebuilding my life. But my sister encouraged me to share my story. hoping some impartial views might provide me clarity. So here I am. It all started 3 months ago, a day I thought would just be another ordinary Saturday. My best friend Maya and I had plans: lunch at our favorite cafe, followed by a stroll in the park. We had known each other since high school, sharing laughter, secrets, and the kind of dreams that felt like they would be realized only together, except this time they felt shattered. That morning, I was buzzing with excitement as I got ready. Maya had been quieter than usual lately, and I thought perhaps that she, like me, was feeling the weight of adult responsibilities. My psyche prepared itself for deep conversations where we'd support one another as we had always done. I was blissfully unaware of the dark cloud looming over our friendship. We met at noon, and while the cafe was bustling with life, I sensed something off. Her smile felt strained, her eyes darted nervously. Still, I brushed it off. We shared a table, near the window, surrounded by the scent of fresh pastries and roasted coffee. "Two of our favorite things, Maya. Is everything okay?" I asked, concerned. "Yeah, it's been a crazy week," she responded, avoiding my gaze. We moved on to lighter topics, but the air felt heavy. Between bites of my sandwich, I noticed that her hand trembled slightly, grasping her iced latte like it was her lifeline. At that moment, I dismissed the thoughts of impending doom that crossed my mind. Little did I know that a storm was brewing, one that would tear apart everything I ever believed in. We left the cafe and headed towards the park, laughter escaping us intermittently as we reminisced about our childhood. I suggested we sit on our favorite bench, a wooden seat beneath the ancient oak trees. It was a spot where we shared countless memories, a sanctuary for our trust. But on that day, the calmness of the park felt unsettling. Maya took a deep breath, her expression shifting from one of glee to solemnity. "Listen," she began, her voice faltering. "There's something I need to tell you." My heart raced. As dread unfurled inside me. "What is it?" I've been seeing Ethan. Ethan, my ex-boyfriend, the one who had crushed my heart into a million pieces 2 years prior. He'd promised me the world, but when life got tough, he vanished, leaving a gaping hole where trust used to be. My stomach twisted as I processed the words. Ethan had been like a ghost to me, a painful reminder of a past I had fought to forget. Maya continued, oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind. "I know I should have told you earlier, but we really clicked and it just happened. I'm so sorry. I hope you can forgive me." Forgive her? How could she? She didn't just take my ex. She knowingly entered a relationship that would cut me deeper than any knife. "Did you even think about how this would affect me?" I demanded, voice quaking with a cocktail of betrayal and hurt. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I swear it was never a plan," she cried. The tears glimmering in her eyes matched the pain in mine, a strange, sickening mirror of emotions. "Did you even consider talking to me first? You know how much Ethan hurt me." My voice trembled as I struggled to keep my composure. This is an ultimate betrayal. "I know, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "But I really like him." That last statement was all it took to understand where I stood. Before I could think, my legs propelled me away from that bench, away from the park, and from the person who I thought would always be by my side. I left Maya standing alone beneath the towering oak, the weight of my world sliding away with each desperate step. In the weeks that followed, the fallout became suffocating. I found myself drowning in a torrent of heartbreak, disappointment, and anger. I had always supported Maya in her relationships. That was our pact. Yet, here she was, crossing an unspoken boundary we had both agreed upon years ago. Ethan was someone I couldn't escape, no matter how hard I tried. Whenever I saw them together on social media or in the town square, the betrayal wounded deeper each time. My friends had mixed feelings. Some believed I had every right to feel betrayed, while others claimed I was overreacting, that they were both adults capable of making their own choices. My sister, however, sided with me. "You deserve better than that." Maya should have respected your feelings, she admonished. A month after the incident, I received a text from Maya. "Can we talk?" I stared at my phone, wrestling with indecision. My heart was torn. I missed my friend, but couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that suffocated our bond. Eventually, I replied, "I'm not ready." And I didn't respond again. Days turned into weeks as the silence stretched between us. I consumed myself with work, gym sessions, and my love for painting, a solitary harbor where I could drown my emotions in colors, strokes, and canvases. Yet each brushstroke carried the weight of my unvoiced anger and sorrow. Finally, after 2 months, I found an unlikely sanctuary in my routine, a trip to the beach with my sister. Seagulls squawked above our heads while the salty breeze danced through our hair. The landscape stretched before us, a vast expanse of blue that quelled my unrest if only for a moment. As I took in the sound of waves crashing, my phone buzzed. Maya. I miss us. I clenched my teeth and typed back, "You miss what you had, Maya. What you did can't be undone." She responded almost instantly. "I understand why you're hurt, but please tell me what to do." That was my breaking point. I realized then that I didn't want to tell her what to do. I wanted her to figure it out on her own. I wanted the old Maya back, the one who had my back when the world felt heavy. But could I trust her again? Would things ever go back to normal? As the days melted into weeks, I continued to carry my hurt. Yet with every sunset and rising tide, I began to wonder if clinging to the past was truly worth it. Forgiveness felt like an ocean away, but perhaps harboring this resentment would drown me in the end. And then, in a moment of clarity, I understood I had a choice. I could let my anger fester, or I could take the first step toward healing. But it wouldn't mean I had to completely erase the betrayal from my heart. It would simply mean I was choosing not to let it imprison me. Back at the beach, one last time to gather my thoughts, I composed a message to Maya. "I think we need to talk. In person." We scheduled a meeting at our cafe, the same one we had visited before everything went wrong. As I walked into the warm, familiar environment, my heart raced. Maya was already seated at our favorite table, the one by the window where we used to spill our thoughts and dreams. "Hey," she greeted, her voice timid. "Hey," I replied, my gaze steady. The small talk felt foreign, filled with choppy pauses that sliced through the remaining warmth. We were two strangers bound by shared history, but the betrayal remained dormant between us. After a few moments of nervous fidgeting, Maya spoke up. "I'm really sorry. I completely understand your pain and why you may not want me in your life anymore." I took a deep breath, the weight of her words clearing the air but also bringing fresh pain lingering in my heart. This hurts a lot, Maya. It's not just about Ethan, it's about trust, about you disregarding our friendship. I know, and I can't change what I did, but I want the chance to make it right," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "Can those bridges really be rebuilt?" "I can only hope they can," she replied, voice shaky but honest. We sat in silence for a few moments, letting the gravity of the conversation settle. My heart screamed for safety, for reassurance, and the forlorn wish for things to just be okay again. I finally sighed. "I can't promise that everything will be the same, but if you're truly willing to work for this, to prove your loyalty to our friendship, I'm open to trying." Her face lit up with a vulnerability that had always drawn me to her. "I'll do whatever it takes. I miss you too much. And perhaps I missed her too, the old her, the one who treated our friendship as sacred. So, am I the a-hole? Maybe I was for holding on to my pain for so long. Perhaps moving forward meant letting go of my anger, accepting Maya's apologies, and learning to trust again. Today, walking away changed everything, but maybe tomorrow could hold promise if we worked for it together. In the end, friendships can fray, but if love is real, they can often be stitched back together. It just requires time, patience, and the willingness to forgive. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my half-sister to my wedding? When I was first asked to write this story, I hesitated. It's delicate territory, and it seems like everyone has an opinion about family, especially when you throw in weddings. But here I am, pouring my heart out into a Reddit post to get some perspective. So let's dive into the chaos that is my family dynamic. My name is Sarah, and I'm a 27-year-old teacher living in a small town in Idaho. I've always been close to my parents. Well, my mum at least. My dad walked out when I was just a kid, leaving a gaping hole in my life that my mum adeptly filled with love and support. She never spoke ill of him or put me in the position to choose sides. Over the years, I learned to accept that some stories don't have a happy ending. Fast forward to last year. I got engaged to Derek, the kind of guy who makes me laugh like no one else can. We set our wedding date for December 12th, perfectly nestled between the holiday season and the New Year's celebrations. Planning the wedding was a whirlwind of excitement, stress, and endless decisions. But one thing that hung over everything was my dad's second family. I refer to them as the others because it is just too painful to think about what might have been. See, when Dad left, he started a new life with someone else, and that someone else ended up being my half-sister, Clara, who's now 15. I'd stumbled upon the existence of Clara quite by accident when I was 16. Social media is a double-edged sword, and in my case, it brought me face to face with the reality of my father's choices. I got a friend request from a girl who shared the same last name as my dad, and after connecting the dots, I learned the truth. My mom was heartbroken. She never expected him to completely sever ties. That's the thing about family. Sometimes, it's the ones you're born into who hurt you the hardest. I saw the hurt in her eyes every time I'd mention my dad, and it pushed me away from any inclination to reach out to my half-sister. Furthermore, when I finally met Clara at our father's birthday party a couple of years later, it felt like a slap in the face. She looked so much like me, yet I felt no connection. Why should I welcome someone who had a slice of the life that was taken from me? When the wedding planning kicked in, I had a nagging thought. Should I invite Clara? After all, it was a family gathering, and maybe it was time to extend the olive branch. My mum was adamantly against it, stressing that inviting her would only open old wounds. But Derek was more open-minded and suggested that family drama was unavoidable, so why not try to embrace it? I mulled it over for days. The thought of seeing Clara again sent shivers down my spine. The image of her skipping around my dad's backyard, oblivious to what had transpired in my life, haunted me. The summer before, she had reached out to me on Instagram, asking why we hadn't been in touch. I read that message 100 times, unable to muster a response. I wasn't ready to confront that side of my life. In the end, I made my decision. When I finalized the guest list, I left Clara's name off. It was a simple yet effective way to protect myself, I thought. I rationalized that my wedding day wasn't the right time to navigate complicated family dynamics. But as December approached, my choice weighed heavier on my soul. The day of the wedding arrived, bright and crisp like a beautiful painting. I was wrapped in the joy of love and surrounded by friends and family who supported me. Just as we were about to walk down the aisle, my phone buzzed. I glanced down and saw a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was Clara. I saw the wedding pictures. I wish you were my sister too. It's not fair that you don't see me that way. Those words sent a fresh wave of guilt crashing over me. I shared this with my mom later that evening. To my surprise, she was surprisingly understanding. You made the right choice for your day, sweetheart, but know that this will be a journey for both of you at some point. You can't run forever. Yet despite that reassurance, I couldn't shake off the feeling that my decision might have hurt Clara. That gnawing sense of doubt lingered until the moment I heard from my paternal aunt, who reached out after the wedding. She sent a lovely bouquet and pointedly mentioned how Clara wondered why I hadn't invited her. Moms, dads, sisters, it's complicated, she wrote. Her message kindled something fierce in me. Was I truly the villain in this story? I had always thought of Clara as the other, without considering her feelings or the fact that she didn't choose this life. I remembered her innocent requests to connect, and how I had pushed her away. With that in mind, my heart began to soften, and I decided to reach out. I sent Clara a heartfelt message apologizing for not including her, explaining how complicated everything was, but that I would like to make an effort to get to know her. It took me a few days to muster the courage, but finally I pressed send. In what felt like an eternity, I received a reply. It was candid and touching. Clara said she understood, that she knew our family dynamics were messy, but she'd always hoped to bridge that gap. Hearing those words felt like a balm to an open wound, and after a few more exchanges, we decided to meet up for coffee. Our first meeting was awkward. She fidgeted, and I wasn't sure how to break the ice. But as we talked, something remarkable happened. The walls I had built up slowly crumbled, and I found myself laughing with her over shared interests and quirks. Somehow, through this painful journey, we began to forge a new type of sisterhood, one that wasn't built on shared experiences, but on the possibility of learning from one another. So, am I the a-hole for not inviting Clara to my wedding? Maybe in the moment, yes. I chose to protect my heart rather than open it to potential pain. But sometimes it takes a little distance for clarity to emerge, and through this experience I learned that family is messy, unpredictable, and ultimately worth navigating in day. This life we grow, evolve, and learn to adapt. I hope in the end Clara and I will look back on this imperfect beginning with kindness. We may not share a childhood, but through forgiveness and understanding, perhaps we can create our own story that bridges the past with the future. As I posted this, my heart felt lighter, and while I still don't have all the answers, I'm ready to welcome Clara into my life, one step at a time. So what do you think, Reddit? Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for cutting ties with my family? I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would write a Reddit post pleading for validation, but here I am, sitting on my bed in the midst of the mess that is my life, typing out my own emotional purge. My friends say I need to stop focusing on my family and put myself first, but I can't help but wonder if I'm the one in the wrong. So here goes. Let me lay it all out for you. I 28F, grew up in what was outwardly a typical suburban family, but behind closed doors, things were far from perfect. My parents, both staunchly traditional and proud, had a clear vision of what their children should be. My older brother James, 31M, was the golden child, smart, athletic, and charismatic, while I, the sensitive one, seemed to float in his shadows. I was often dismissed as the over-emotional type, and while I tried to fit into the family mold, I always felt like I was clutching at sand, watching it slip away. After returning from college, after a tumultuous time learning about myself and my passions, things escalated when I came out to my family as bisexual. I had spent countless nights tossing and turning, replaying scenarios in my head about their potential reactions. The day I finally gathered the courage to tell them was as pivotal as the day I left for college. As I sat across from them at the dinner table, my heart raced, but I knew I needed to speak. Dad, Mum, there's something I want to share with you. Both, I started, my voice trembling slightly. I'm bisexual. Their reactions were dramatic, though perhaps not as explosive as I'd imagined. My father's face turned ashen, while my mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin, as if that would somehow hide her disappointment. James remained eerily quiet, his demeanor unreadable. It all spiraled from there. My parents begged me to reconsider my lifestyle choices, saying I was going through a phase. James, whom I thought would be my ally, sided with them, which was perhaps the deepest betrayal. But I love the same way you do. How is it a phase? Isn't love just love? The question fell flat, unanswered, echoing around the table as silence reigned. That day marked the beginning of a rift in my family. Although my parents insisted that they still loved me, their love was riddled with conditions. Those conditions only multiplied as time moved forward, and I found myself feeling increasingly isolated. Holidays, birthdays, every encounter started becoming a walk on eggshells. If no one mentioned my sexuality, maybe we could pretend everything was normal. The final straw came on my 27th birthday, when my parents threw a party for James, proclaiming him a gift to the family. You know how hard he works, they gushed. I thought our mother might actually faint from pride. I stood there, an invisible guest in my own life, choking on my laughter while hiding my tears. I couldn't shake the feeling of being unwanted, a nuisance. Feeling cornered, I left early that night, tears streaming down my cheeks as I drove in silence. I could hear the echoes of my parents' conversations over the years, the dismissals, the jabs about my emotionality, the promises of undying love as long as I stayed within their acceptable boundaries. Perhaps they didn't see the price I paid for their acceptance. When I returned home, I started looking at my life holistically. It wasn't just the big moments, the birthdays and holidays. It was the little things, too. The way they could never quite support my career choices. The way they often glossed over my successes. always weaving it back to James's achievements. I needed something more than mere existence in our family. I needed to feel valued, respected, and seen. Yet every time I tried to express my needs, they would crumble into arguments, veering back into territories where I remained the irrational one. My breaking point came shortly after the birthday party. As I scrolled through social media one morning, I stumbled on a collection of photos from the party. My brother, flanked by friends and family, beaming with pride while I stood in the periphery, buried beneath someone else's happiness. I felt, as quoted lines of poetry tend to resonate, this was the moment that reframed everything. I was done living for them. I met with a therapist, started setting boundaries, and that's when I made the hardest choice of my life: cutting ties with my family. I crafted a message to my parents, trying to explain my feelings and choices, attempting to soften it with love. I detailed years of hurt, tucked behind pleasantries and love, finally taking ownership of my narrative instead of letting them dictate it. The silence on their end was deafening. My parents didn't acknowledge my message at all. Instead, they reached out to James, who reached out to me. "They're just worried about you," he said. "They want you to see their perspective." For the first time, I felt a flicker of rage surface. Why should I have to fight for their approval while they made me feel unloved and unwanted? From that moment, I resolved to protect my mental health and step back completely. I retreated into a bubble of chosen family, friends who embraced me for who I was, accepting all parts of me, flaws and talents alike. I found solace in the art community I had been so eager to dive into during my college days. Slowly but surely, I discovered the profound beauty of chosen bonds. Now here I sit, a year later, still consumed by mixed feelings. I've thrived in ways I never thought possible, leaning into my artistry and building my dream of becoming a graphic novelist. Yet, the absence of my family gnaws at me. At times I feel empowered by it. At others, guilt washes over me. So here's my question. Am I the a-hole for cutting ties with my family? Ultimately, my decision has shaped my sense of self. I walked away from the toxicity, but did I throw away an opportunity to foster familial love? Reddit, am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for cutting ties with my family? I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would write a Reddit post pleading for validation. But here I am, sitting on my bed in the midst of the mess that is my life, typing out my own emotional purge. My friends say I need to stop focusing on my family and put myself first, but I can't help but wonder if I'm the one in the wrong. So here goes. Let me lay it all out for you. I, 28F, grew up in what was outwardly a typical suburban family, but behind closed doors things were far from perfect. My parents, both staunchly traditional and proud, had a clear vision of what their children should be. My older brother James, 31 was the golden child, smart, athletic and charismatic, while I, the sensitive one, seemed to float in his shadows. I was often dismissed as the over-emotional type, and while I tried to fit into the family mold, I always felt like I was clutching at sand, watching it slip away. After returning from college, after a tumultuous time learning about myself and my passions, things escalated when I came out to my family as bisexual. I had spent countless nights tossing and turning, replaying scenarios in my head about their potential reactions. The day I finally gathered the courage to tell them was as pivotal as the day I left for college. As I sat across from them at the dinner table, my heart raced, but I knew I needed to speak. "Dad, Mom, there's something I want to share with you. Both," I started, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm bisexual." Their reactions were dramatic, though perhaps not as explosive as I'd imagined. My father's face turned ashen, while my mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin as if that would somehow hide her disappointment. James remained eerily quiet, his demeanor unreadable. It all spiraled from there. My parents begged me to reconsider my lifestyle choices, saying I was going through a phase. James, whom I thought would be my ally, sided with them, which was perhaps the deepest betrayal. "But I love the same way you do. How is it a phase? Isn't love just love?" The question fell flat, unanswered, echoing around the table as silence reigned. That day marked the beginning of a rift in my family. Although my parents insisted that they still loved me, their love was riddled with conditions. Those conditions only multiplied as time moved forward, and I found myself feeling increasingly isolated. Holidays, birthdays, every encounter started becoming a walk on eggshells. If no one mentioned my sexuality, maybe we could pretend everything was normal. The final straw came on my 27th birthday, when my parents threw a party for James, proclaiming him a gift to the family. "You know how hard he works," they gushed. I thought our mother might actually faint from pride. I stood there, an invisible guest in my own life, choking on my laughter while hiding my tears. I couldn't shake the feeling of being unwanted. A nuisance. Feeling cornered, I left early that night, tears streaming down my cheeks as I drove in silence. I could hear the echoes of my parents' conversations over the years, the dismissals, the jabs about my emotionality, the promises of undying love as long as I stayed within their acceptable boundaries. Perhaps they didn't see the price I paid for their acceptance. When I returned home, I started looking at my life holistically. It wasn't just the big moments, the birthdays and holidays, it was the little things too. The way they could never quite support my career choices, the way they often glossed over my successes, always weaving it back to James's achievements. I needed something more than mere existence in our family. I needed to feel valued, respected, and seen. Yet every time I tried to express my needs, they would crumble into arguments, veering back into territories where I remained the irrational one. My breaking point came shortly after the birthday party. As I scrolled through social media one morning, I stumbled on a collection of photos from the party. My brother, flanked by friends and family, beaming with pride while I stood in the periphery, buried beneath someone else's happiness. I felt, as quoted lines of poetry tend to resonate, this was the moment that reframed everything. I was done living for them. I met with a therapist, started setting boundaries, and that's when I made the hardest choice of my life, cutting ties with my family. I crafted a message to my parents, trying to explain my feelings and choices, attempting to soften it with love. I detailed years of hurt, tucked behind pleasantries and love, finally taking ownership of my narrative instead of letting them dictate it. The silence on their end was deafening. My parents didn't acknowledge my message at all. Instead, they reached out to James, who reached out to me. "They're just worried about you," he said. "They want you to see their perspective." For the first time, I felt a flicker of rage surface. Why should I have to fight for their approval while they made me feel unloved and unwanted? From that moment, I resolved to protect my mental health and step back completely. I retreated into a bubble of chosen family, friends who embraced me for who I was, accepting all parts of me, flaws and talents alike. I found solace in the art community I had been so eager to dive into during my college days. Slowly but surely, I discovered the profound beauty of chosen bonds. Now here I sit, a year later, still consumed by mixed feelings. I've thrived in ways I never thought possible, leaning into my artistry and building my dream of becoming a graphic novelist. Yet the absence of my family gnaws at me. At times I feel empowered by it. At others, guilt washes over me. So here's my question. Am I the a-hole for cutting ties with my family? Ultimately, my decision has shaped my sense of self. I walked away from the toxicity, but did I throw away an opportunity to foster familial love? Reddit. Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for choosing my education over my boyfriend? I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am, seeking some outside perspective on what has been a whirlwind of emotional chaos in my life. I'm a 22-year-old college student majoring in psychology, and the past few months have completely altered the trajectory of my day-to-day life, and not necessarily in a good way. It all started when I was awarded an internship at a renowned psychiatric hospital in my city, a huge stepping stone for someone in my field. The hospital was known for its challenging environment, diverse client demographics, and the opportunity to be mentored by some of the leading experts. I couldn't believe my luck. This was an opportunity I had been dreaming of since I started college. The internship would run for 8 months, and while I was still enrolled in classes, I knew that I would be spending long hours at the hospital. Classes were important, But this internship was going to provide real-world experience that I couldn't pass up. After discussing with my academic advisor and getting positive feedback about managing both my studies and the internship, I decided to proceed. However, this was where the trouble began. My boyfriend Matt, whom I've been dating for almost 3 years, was not pleased about my decision. He's currently pursuing his degree in fine arts, and I always thought we were supportive of each other's ambitions. But suddenly Matt had a problem with my internship because it would require me to commit more time to my studies and job. At first, I tried to downplay the situation and assured him that I would still make time for us. I even set specific days for date nights and weekend activities. But Matt's concerns grew louder as the start date for the internship approached. He claimed I was prioritizing my career and that I wouldn't have time for our relationship. "Are you really going to pick your future over us?" he asked one evening, frustration lacing his tone during a heated discussion. "It's not like that, Matt. I'm not choosing my future over you. This is important for me, for my career," I replied, trying to remain calm, but the truth was I started feeling trapped. I had never intended to put my education on a pedestal, but I also realized that if I didn't take this opportunity seriously, it could negatively impact my future. The thought of giving it all up for the sake of a relationship felt suffocating. When the discussions turned into arguments, things escalated quickly. Matt began to isolate himself emotionally. He stopped being supportive and he became distant. When I confided in him about my feelings of anxiety regarding the internship, he dismissed my worries, stating I was looking for excuses to neglect him. That hurt. The relationships I had built in my life had always required nurturing, not the kindling that could burn out easily. It felt like our relationship was on a precarious ledge, and I was the one teetering at the edge. Things came to a head one evening when I came home from a particularly exhausting orientation at the hospital. My excitement to share my day was met with silence. Matt was sitting on the couch with a forlorn expression on his face. As I recounted the incredible people I had met and the thrilling things I would be learning, he grew increasingly agitated. "Do you even hear yourself? You're so wrapped up in this internship that you have no time for me," he yelled, his face flushed with anger. I was taken aback. "What do you want me to do, Matt? This is my career. I'm trying to build a future for myself. I thought you'd be happy for me." "Happy? I'm losing my girlfriend to textbooks and hospital shifts," he retorted, throwing his hands in the air. It was at that moment I realized we were not just having a disagreement. We were standing on opposite sides of a chasm that seemed irreparable. I felt frustrated, hurt, and bewildered by the lack of support from someone I loved. In the weeks that followed, the tension only escalated. I devoted myself to my internship and school, trying to balance everything while navigating Matt's increasing resentment. He began to make snide comments about my priorities, citing how artists like him had to struggle for recognition. I started feeling like a villain in my own life story. My passion for my education was quickly replaced with guilt for neglecting our relationship. One evening I came home exhausted and found a pair of Matt's art supplies sprawled across our tiny living room. Instead of feeling a sense of comfort, I felt a wave of impending dread as I noticed Matt was absent again, probably off working on one of his projects. With or without me didn't seem to matter anymore. When he finally returned home, I initiated a conversation, unconsciously bracing myself for another argument. This time, however, I took a different approach. "I'm feeling really overwhelmed," I admitted, my voice trembling as I spoke. "I miss you. I feel like I'm losing touch with who we are as a couple. This internship is challenging me in so many ways, and I need you to be my partner, not my adversary." He stared at me for a long moment, and for a split second I thought I saw a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. But that moment quickly dissipated, replaced by a hardened resolve. "You always seem to be so busy. I feel like you're more in love with your work than with me," he shot back with a coldness that pierced my heart. That's when I decided to lay everything on the table. "You have to choose if you want to be with me. I can't continue like this if you're going to keep resenting me for wanting to pursue my dreams. I love you, but I need to put my education first for my future. Will you support me, or do we need to rethink our relationship?" Those words hung in the air like a heavy curtain, separating us in more ways than one. I don't know what I expected him to say, but his disheartened downslope of a sigh hinted at something painful. "I can't believe you would even think to ask that after everything we've been through," he replied, looking away and refusing to meet my eyes. The next few days passed like a foggy haze. I found myself at the hospital bright and early, but my mind was elsewhere. Matt had gone radio silent, no messages, no calls. I wanted to reach out, but I didn't know how to take the first step into the dark void that connected us. Then, just as I was beginning to accept the reality that life continued regardless, I received a message from him that made my heart lurch. "I need some time to think. I don't know if I can handle being with someone who prioritizes their career over me." I sat there numb, the reality crashing over me like an unexpected wave. I instantly felt guilty. Had I really made that choice? Had I chosen my career over love? I began questioning my worth. Should I have sacrificed my future for his comfort? Sought solace in my friends, attempting to grasp any semblance of agreement or empathy. They reminded me that my education and dreams mattered. They were crucial for my well-being. But I also yearned for understanding. Matt and I had always made each other's ambitions a priority. Had I crossed a line somewhere? Weeks turned into a drawn-out silence that felt far too loud. I submerged myself in my internship, trying to numb the signals of heartache. And while I thrived in my new role, the absence of Matt loomed like an ever-looming shadow. Finally, after a month, I received a call from him. My heart raced, a mix of hope and dread intertwined. "I've been thinking a lot," he said when I picked up the phone, his voice breaking slightly. "I don't know what happened to us, but I miss you. I don't want to end things, but I can't be with someone who doesn't put us first." I took a deep breath, preparing to dive into the deep end of honesty. "Matt, I didn't mean to make you feel neglected. I've been trying to build a future for us while also pursuing a career. I wish we could have talked about it without accusations. But I can't give up my dreams. I'm not asking for you to prioritize my work. I just want us to find a balance." Silence fell on the other end of the line, and then he spoke. "Maybe we both need to take some time. I'll always care about you, but I can't be the reason you don't succeed. But you have to understand I can't help but struggle with feeling like I'm losing you to this." I agreed, realizing each of us needed to align our priorities and our expectations. It was a difficult truth, but it suddenly felt necessary, clear. In fact, to say it was hard to let go is an understatement. I felt stripped bare without him, and I spent many sleepless nights processing the internal conflict. Was I the a-hole for pursuing my dreams and letting a relationship falter, or was it simply a part of life that required sacrifices? In the end, as the months passed and I continued to thrive in my internship, I learned a crucial lesson. Relationships require both balance and mutual respect. The scales can tip precariously, and only time reveals whether the love is strong enough to withstand the demands of one's personal ambition. I may not know the answer to if I was truly the a-hole in the weeks that followed, but what I do know is that ultimately, it was necessary for each of us to evaluate our lives, and that sometimes love means letting go. In time, perhaps, I'll find someone who supports my dreams through the lens of love, and maybe even Matt. And I will connect again in the future. But for now, I'm focused on what truly matters to me, my education, my dreams, and the hope of building a future where love and ambition walk hand in hand. Am I the a-hole for telling my friend's new boyfriend he's ugly? I've always been known as the blunt one in my circle of friends. My name is Claire, and I've never shied away from expressing my honest opinions. However, little did I know that a simple comment might devolve into a whirlwind of consequences that would necessitate my posting on Reddit's "Am I the a-hole" thread. It all started a few weeks ago when my best friend Jenna announced that she had met someone new. For context, Jenna and I have been friends since childhood, and in her romantic life she's often had the worst luck. Previous boyfriends have manipulated her, played mind games, and treated her like trash. So, naturally, I was excited for her when she told me about Leon, a guy she met at a coffee shop who seemed to have his life together, at least on paper. When Jenna finally arranged a small gathering for us to meet Leon, I felt a mix of anticipation and skepticism. I knew my role as the protective friend. I would need to evaluate whether this new addition to her life was worthy of her affection. Frankly, I was nervous. I had built up so much faith in him. Jenna had sounded so happy when she spoke of him. When Leon arrived, I did my best to reserve judgment. He was charming in conversation, attentive to Jenna, and they seemed to have a good rapport. But as the evening wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I don't typically care about looks, but Leon had a sort of odd aura that made me uneasy. The man was confidently mismatched, his outfits clashing horrendously, and while I understand that appearances aren't everything, he was undeniably not what I expected. Perhaps I was just being judgmental. I had to remind myself to be kind. And then, it happened. During one of the lulls in conversation, I noted how he was wearing a t-shirt that looked like it belonged in the clearance section of a thrift store. I blurted it out, not quite realizing how the words had escaped my mouth until Jenna's face turned from excitement to something icy. Leon's expression fell, mortified. "Yeah, it's a bit colorful, huh?" he replied, forcing a laugh despite the tension. Jenna's eyes shot daggers at me, and I knew instantly that I crossed a line. Trying to backtrack, I attempted to explain that my intention was to lighten the mood, but my words fell flat. The rest of the evening was punctuated by awkward silence. Leon didn't engage after that, and Jenna wouldn't meet my gaze. By the time Leon left, my heart was heavier than I expected. "Claire, what the hell?" she hissed once we were alone. "I was just trying to be funny," I mumbled, immediately backpedaling. Jenna was fuming, her anger palpable. "That was incredibly rude. You didn't even give him a chance. It wasn't just his outfit. That comment was unnecessary. You know I didn't mean anything by it, right?" I pleaded, exasperation and regret mixing in my voice. She didn't respond. The evening ended with her storming off, leaving me alone to wallow in my mistake. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to reach out to Jenna numerous times, but each attempt was met with either silence or curt replies. Finally, I decided to confront the situation. I called her one afternoon, fighting through the growing sense of dread in my gut. "Jenna, can we talk?" She hesitated, but eventually agreed to meet at our favorite diner the following day. Meeting her was both a relief and a nightmare. The diner's energy, which was usually filled with chatter and warmth, felt cold between us. Her arms were crossed against her chest as I wiped my hands anxiously across the Formica table. "I'm really sorry," I said, and I meant it. Jenna's eyes were fierce but full of hurt. "You really hurt his feelings, Claire, and mine too. I thought we were past this. Why do you always have to say what's on your mind without thinking about the consequences?" I took a deep breath. "I messed up, I know that, okay? I'm not trying to make excuses, but I just wanted to be honest. It's who I am. Honesty is one thing, cruelty is another," she chastised. "There's a difference." I felt my emotions bubbling to the surface. "But Jenna, look at him. He looks like he just walked off the set of a B-list horror film. I wouldn't be a good friend if I didn't tell you what I really think." "Maybe you're not meant to be the friend who gives opinions about my boyfriends," she shot back. "Maybe you should realize that not everyone needs your brand of honesty." My pulse quickened. "So this is how it's going to be? You're going to side with him over me? After all these years?" Jenna paused, her expression softening slightly. "This isn't about him, Claire. This is about you and how you treat the people I care about. I need to know that you'll support me, not try to push away other people from my life because of your opinions." It stung to hear that, and as she spoke, I recognized the truth in her words. Maybe I had become too attached to the idea of being the filter for her life. In all my attempts to filter out toxicity, I had become a source of it myself. "I don't want to lose you, Jenna," I said, and I genuinely meant it. My voice trembled, so laced with vulnerability. "I need some time," she whispered, and just like that she stood up. I watched her walk away, guilt gnawing at me like a relentless tide. The following weeks were agonizingly quiet. I went through mundane routines, the silence in my phone, and empty invitations to gatherings. Jenna and I had shared everything, the highs of life and the hardships, and suddenly it felt like I was cut off from a part of my soul. Then came the unexpected ultimatum. Jenna texted me one evening, inviting me to a small gathering she was hosting in her apartment. "Leon will be there. Don't say anything stupid or you won't be welcome in my life anymore," she warned in her message. I was taken aback, my stomach twisted, half in fear and half in defiance. Did she really think I was that thoughtless? However, I couldn't ignore the flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could make things right again. The evening of the gathering was tense. When I arrived at her apartment, Jenna greeted me, her smile strained but genuine. Leon was on the other side of the room, blending into the background, leaning awkwardly against the wall. I approached him, my heart racing. "Hey, Leon, I'm really sorry for the comment I made the last time we met. It was rude and it wasn't fair to you." He regarded me for a moment, clearly taken aback. Thanks for saying that. It was not a great first impression." His humor while addressing the offense surprised me. I could see glimpses of his charisma beneath that odd exterior. Maybe Jenna was right. Maybe in seeking to protect her, I had inadvertently harmed her instead. The atmosphere gradually lightened over the evening. I hesitantly tried to engage with Leon, and amidst superficial discussions about movies and music, I realized he wasn't just some random guy. It felt as though he presented a side of Jenna that I had never seen. She would light up every time he spoke, laughter dancing in her eyes. I pulled Jenna aside during a lull. "I get it now. He makes you happy." I was wrong. "About him, okay?" It felt powerful to admit that I was human and flawed, like we all were. Jenna seemed to breathe easier. "I appreciate that, Claire, I really do." We continued to share moments, the night punctuated with warmth and laughter. Yet, the weight of my previous words trailed behind me like a shadow. The following day, I hesitated before posting on Reddit. I could feel the lingering guilt and the weight of my wrongdoings. As I composed my thoughts, I wondered if I should be surprised at how much "am I the a-hole" applied to my situation. The act of shortening a complicated relationship into a brief inquiry punctuated the absurdity of our everyday lives. I hit submit and waited with my heart racing. Within minutes, a torrent of comments flooded my screen, some sympathetic, others scathing. Some commenters told me I grounded my honesty in crude insensitivity. Others shared stories about how their friends had destroyed relationships through similar missteps. I felt every word resonate, as if each keystroke was a judgment against my character. With every response, I knew I wasn't just hoping for absolution. I was seeking accountability. Eventually, my post garnered enough responses for me to realize that while I was shamed by the consequences of my words, I was also learning a powerful lesson in compassion, understanding, and humility. The day after the Reddit post, I received a text from Jenna asking if I wanted to grab coffee. When I arrived at the cafe, I braced myself for another tough conversation. "Are you ready to discuss the elephant in the room?" she prompted, her voice weary. I nodded. Always. By the end of our chat, we had arrived at a renewed understanding. I would never fully shed my biting honesty, but I could strive to express my thoughts with more grace going forward. Ultimately, I may not ever be able to say that I wouldn't make mistakes again, but maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't always make me the a-hole. And as I sat across from her, I couldn't help but smile. Because in friendship, growth is the kind of beauty that balances out all our flaws. Am I the a-hole? Sometimes when I look back on that fateful summer, I wonder if I could have done things differently. Maybe if I had just kept my mouth shut or stayed out of it entirely, my life wouldn't have spiraled into chaos. But how can one remain silent when truth is standing there, screaming to be acknowledged? I suppose that's my burden, a heavy one forged from the decisions I made that sunny, buzzing season. I'm Lily, a student nurse, 25 years old, living in a small college town. My life had always revolved around helping others, and I'd kept my circle tight, comprising of my close friends, Kate and Lucas. They were my confidants, my shoulder to cry on, and my partners in mischief. You could say we complemented each other well. Where I tended towards caution, Kate was impulsive, and Lucas always managed to be the voice of reason. It was a warm afternoon in July when the three of us decided to throw a barbecue at Lucas's house. There was nothing particularly extraordinary about it, just good food, laughter, and the faint echo of music drifting into the summer air. The three of us spent the day cooking and reminiscing. However, amid the idyllic scene, a storm was brewing below the surface. That's when I noticed the subtle change in Kate. She had been quieter, glancing at her phone more frequently. I brushed it off at first, attributing it to her usual tendency to be absorbed in social media, but an uneasy feeling crept into my stomach. Something was off, and I felt a need to dig deeper. When the sun dipped below the horizon, illuminating everything in a warm, golden hue, I casually approached Kate. "Hey, what's up with you today? You've been pretty distracted." Her expression gave nothing away at first, but after a moment she sighed, looking out at the dusk. "It's nothing. Just busy thinking about some stuff, that's all." I raised an eyebrow, the instinct to pry taking over. "Come on, you can tell me. Is it about Josh?" Josh had been Kate's boyfriend for over a year, and frankly, I had my doubts about him. He seemed charming enough at first, but as their relationship grew, I noticed signs of toxicity that made my worries mount. I knew I couldn't tell her how to feel, but I had also seen how he treated her, like she was a trophy to show off instead of a partner to cherish. "It's complicated," she finally murmured, her gaze still peeled to the horizon. "Complicated how?" I pressed. "You know I'll support you no matter what, right? Just be honest with me." She bit her lip, indecision warring visibly across her face. Finally, breaking through the dam of her silence, she whispered, "He's become controlling. But I love him, and I don't know if I should end things." My heart sank as I listened to her. I knew Kate's heart was in the right place, but love can blind us to reality. Even her closest friends could see the manipulation, but to her, he wrapped those flaws up in the shiny paper of passion. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my words. "Kate," I said, lowering my voice, "being in love shouldn't make you feel trapped. If he's controlling you, you need to reconsider the relationship." She recoiled slightly, tears pooling in her eyes. "You think I'm overreacting? You think I'm weak for not ending it? No, that's not what I meant at all. But she cut me off, her voice rising. "You're framing it like I can't deal with my own problems. It's not just controlling. He's still a good person, most of the time." I felt the heat of disagreement prickling at my skin. Hadn't she just admitted the truth? But we weren't going to resolve this tonight. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter as the group continued enjoying the party around us. Lucas, oblivious to our discussion, rejoined us with fresh drinks. Days turned to weeks, and Kate's roller coaster of emotions took a toll on both of us. I tried to remain a supportive friend, though my gut told me something horrible would come to light eventually. And it did. It was a Friday night, the day before Lucas's birthday. I had just arrived home when I got a frantic call from Kate. The urgency in her voice made my heart race. Something was seriously wrong. "I need you, Lily. Can you come over? It's about Josh." I rushed over, my heart pounding. When I entered her apartment, I found her in tears, crumbled on the floor. It turned out that Josh had gone off the deep end after he saw messages between Kate and a male co-worker. His accusation turned to rage, and the details of that night sent shivers down my spine. Josh had physically confronted her. Anger surged through me at the thought of anyone laying a hand on my friend. I knelt beside her, pulling her into a hug. "You need to get away from him. He's not worth it, Kate. He's dangerous." "I know. I'm done, Lily. I can't keep doing this," she sobbed. Despite the turmoil within me, a shallow breath of relief washed over me like a refreshing tide. "Let's file a police report. We need to make this right." More determination rushed through me, but it was soon overshadowed by fear. What if he retaliated? But the more I contemplated her safety, the more I knew I had to protect her. We didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stayed by her side, racing through plans of how we'd move forward, how she'd end it for good. In the following weeks, I stood by her as she disentangled herself from him, confronting the emotional storm together. But sometimes the storm must pass through others too. Lucas was different. He was supportive at first, but gradually I noticed shadows of annoyance crossing his face as he dealt with Kate's increasing anxiety. He was normally the level-headed one, But as the riptide of emotional chaos swept through our lives, even he began expressing impatience. "Lily," he said one Sunday afternoon, his voice taut, "I get that this is hard for Kate, but we can't keep having our lives dictated by her issues. I had plans for the summer too, you know." I glared at him. "She's your friend too. She needs us more than ever." "Sure, but there's only so much we can do. If she can't pull it together, that's her issue." It was that moment, that fracture, that made me feel alone in this endeavor. I hated how the best of intentions crumbled when faced with reality. I confronted Lucas, and in the heat of the moment, I realized he had a point. In trying to save Kate, I had neglected my own mental health too, and I was becoming a barrier for others in my life. But my inclination was to dive deeper into the fray. Days later, I received a text from Kate. "I'm so scared. He just texted me. He said he's not done with me yet. I think he's watching me." Fear gripped me, but I tried to remain calm. We filed the report, and I insisted she take precautions, changing her phone number and blocking Josh. I stood alongside her as she faced him in order to cut ties permanently. That day we met at a nearby diner. The room echoed with muffled conversations and clinking dishes as I waited, my heart thudding in my chest. She was supposed to meet Josh and tell him it was over for good. I could feel the tension in my bones, and despite my efforts to breathe and remain level-headed, energy crackled in the air around me. I was fidgeting with my phone when her face turned ashen. Panic snaked through my limbs as I turned to see Josh storming towards her, a head taller than anyone in the diner, eyes narrowed like a predator locking onto its prey. Instinct kicked in. I stood between them, my heart hammering behind my ribcage. "You need to leave her alone." He laughed, a harsh sound. "And you think you can stop me? This isn't just some game for you, Josh. You need to back off. Kate wants nothing to do with you." His face flushed with pure rage, and for one terrifying moment I anticipated violence bursting forth. Instead, he leaned in closer, eyes flaring, venomous words slipping through his teeth. "You don't protect her, Lily. You're the one hurt. In the end, and everyone else will watch." Anger bloomed within me, swelling into a fierce fight-or-flight determination. But as I turned around to catch Kate's eye, I saw her standing tall, filled with strengthened resolve. "Stop," she said clearly, her voice steady. "You've hurt me enough. I'm done." One glance at her serene, powerful presence made me realize the power we had gained through friendship and resilience. At that moment, my heart swelled with an understanding. Together we had risen against these fears. And Lucas? Well, our friendship took a turn after that day. While he respected my devotion to Kate, he couldn't handle the emotional turbulence. He expressed his frustrations, claiming I was putting her needs above mine. When I reflected, I realized I had indeed made choices that distanced me from him, but I couldn't betray my core values for what he demanded. Our bond slowly faded into strained silence. Some days, I miss him. I wonder if I was the a-hole for choosing Kate over our friendship. Months passed, and though the world felt new and bright again for Kate, I grappled with the feelings of enchantment and loss. It wasn't until we talked months later that I finally accepted the haze of doubt. "Lily, you were there for me in my darkest hour," she said, her eyes shimmering. "There's no way I could have gotten through it without you. Was it hard for you?" Relief surged through me, mixed with a hint of sadness. "It was harder than I want to admit. I thought I was losing everything." Her gaze softened, and we shared a moment of understanding that transcended words. No, I wasn't the a-hole. I stood firm against the current of scorn. I was a friend, the kind that brought out the best in people, even if it came at the cost of my own bonds. In the end, life isn't simply about questions of right or wrong. Sometimes we have to navigate those murky waters, guided by our hearts. In helping her reclaim her power, I may no longer have my friend Lucas the way I once did. But I knew something invaluable blossomed in my friendship with Kate, an unwavering bond forged in adversity. As I pen this reflection, it's a reminder why we face uncomfortable truths. Are we the a-hole? Perhaps, but maybe it's just another layer of our own story. Because sometimes saving someone means risking everything, and that risk, that's what makes us human.